before Nerf Rogue has qualified for the Grand Finals, and off of that, secured their spot for BlizzCon. Now it's time for our elimination games between Pixel and 430. Hello everyone, I'm Jack, and joining me for our lower quarters elimination round, we've got Sloot, Nagura, and Tettles, and my work colleagues.
You're pushing it.
Oh. I gotta push the envelope a little bit, just a tad. You know, we're gonna be going into Freehold onto this one, and looking at how these teams will start shaping up. 430 in particular, Tettles, you're kind of mentioning it. They were not the cleanest of teams, but they just wanted to execute off of their own strategies. They weren't trying to innovate as we've seen previously, and that's one of the things we've kind of looked at a little bit in the East, is how they're taking some strategies into account and executing on top of them, and they've had mixed results, let's say, put it for the least.
Yeah, so it feels like some of these dungeons are solved in terms of like what's the biggest pull you can actually do and safely survive. However, those pulls will generally speaking be very dangerous for pretty much any group, so 430 feels like they're probably a little bit less coordinated and they don't have the experience and ability to be able to do these large pulls. So they're taking the dungeon piece by piece and they're putting up a little bit slower of times, but they're making sure that they have few to zero deaths in every single run. So it's been an interesting strategy that we've seen them do against some of these teams that are actually looking to pull more aggressive, pull more of these like balls to the walls, MDI style pulls that we've seen. So it'll be interesting to see what 430 does here today.
Looking forward to it with that fortified teaming environment as we're getting ourselves ready for game number 1 between Pixel and 430 on Freehold.
I think this map, Jack's really going to come down to if there's going to be a Disc Priest played again. So we'll have to see.
I think there's a good chance.
I think there's also a good chance coming in from Pixel. We do know that's their comfort pick for the healers, so.
And we know they're very good at healing Grievous, so.
Oh yes, the best.
But it's going to be a fortified environment, so I don't think we're going to have too many struggles onto that end.
I don't think that makes any difference, but fortified is going to be pretty rough. Now, we actually saw this dungeon be quite tough yesterday for a few of the teams as well, just because the teaming on top of fortified, pretty nasty teaming, of course, meaning there is more trash present in the dungeon. But right off the bat, Team 430, we do know, likes to do this pull here with the Emissary and pop their Bloodlust. Indeed, they follow suit on that, as Pixel is doing a more traditional or more common strategy of getting involved in the action right up in Sky Captain Craig's room.
Yeah, let's see if Pixel want to commit their Bloodlust for this pretty huge pull that they're doing. We see the army being popped as well, but mid, which is actually kind of weird because we see usually DKs are holding onto the army for a single target rather than AoE because it's not as effective. But Pixel and their DK committing their Bloodlust for this single target pull, for this AoE pull, sorry. The disc was actually dropping really low, but did manage to recover. Pain Stop is out as well, as Team 430 are getting closer and closer to finishing off their first pull.
Yeah, Elo dipping quite low here too as Pixel starts to head off and finish some of the trash, but we still have quite a bit up in the higher areas of 30 to 50% right now, and some of these enforcers absolutely truck, but seems that the immediate main danger is over right now as Komi gets tossed yet again. Team 430 has cleaned up their pull on the side with the Void Emissary there. Of course, we're in a Void-heavy dungeon as far as the Beguiling Affix. Komi, unfortunately, following, I guess, the danger was not over on the side of no Pixel. They do have their Battle Res available from mid, who unfortunately sacrificed himself in order to do so. All the threat is all over the place right now. We can already see Fame, the Havoc Demon Hunter, running around in circles, making sure he allows Komi time to pick up the threat from these mobs. The Enforcer, unfortunately, still running after Fame right now as Onezor starts to head off to the side.
Yeah, so mid unfortunately cannot release it. He does not have the Shadow Melt available, which is weird because they were actually shrouding up to this point. So maybe he wasn't completing the shroud and had to commit the Shadow Melt to de-aggro the mobs. So he does not have the Shadow Melt available anymore. So he just has to wait until they're out of combat so he can get a rest up. Unfortunately, Onezor actually proccing his staff as well because he did go out of mana. Now on the other side, on Team 430, they have to pull this one pack to spawn the boss because they were doing this first pull without the Enforcer pack here. So once they down this Enforcer, they will have the boss spawn and then they will engage it as well if they didn't change up their strategy from last time around.
So part of the reason mid doesn't have his Shadow Meld is because there's that Void Emissary right on the stairs at the beginning of the dungeon. So the only way to drop combat with it if you're mass stealthing past is to have to Shadow Meld. So he does not have that available. It's back up now, so he could actually technically release. I just don't even know if he'd get through it alive. It is fortified in his teaming, so there's lots there. But they do manage to kill off the rest of the trash as Onezor gets the res on mid. Sky Captain Craig is ready to be pulled here for Team Pixel as Team 430 has already started on Sky Captain Craig. 0 deaths on the board for them, 21% trash trash and is at 80%, about to hit that transition phase at 75, where Sky Captain Craig will, of course, dismount the guano-producing parrot, and they'll be ready to pull it to the side and make sure that, well, that they don't reset the boss. I'm not sure if it was them yesterday that had the reset on the boss, but there was one, so you got to be really careful where the parrot dive comes in. It will knock the tank out of the arena, and if the boss follows the tank, which is likely the case, then we're going to have a reset on our hands.
It was actually one last chance that had the boss reset. They were playing against Team 430. Team 430 still ended up losing the dungeon, though, against one last chance. So Team 430 were playing Freehold yesterday already, but they were just too slow. They didn't end up having any huge mistakes or any huge wipes. Their strategy just seemed a lot slower compared to one last chance one. But Pixel also one of those teams, you know, that don't have those insane strategies where they pull half the dungeon together. So maybe this time around Team 430's strategy is going to be faster than Pixel ones. Maybe it's going to pay off. Or they even had time. They even had one day to prepare a better strategy, a faster one, if they wanted to.
I'm just, you know, I guess it applies to both sides, but especially in the melee area for Pixel, I'm really worried about the survivability of the DK and the fact that he's the only one who can res on the side of Pixel. There's just a lot of that rando damage going on in the trash leading up to, well, really post Sky Captain Craig. You just have the blind rages, a lot of the Shattering Earth going out, so it's very easy for a melee to just kind of keel over and fall. Conversely, of course, the healer could just get gripped in by one of the harpooners and get killed, so both teams only having access to that one battle res. Actually, something that NoPixel doesn't even have available right now for another 6 minutes, so no point even talking too much about that. Sky Captain Craig hits 3% here for Team 430, about to go down. Cinderella quite low, having a lot of struggle healing through that 4 stack of Grievous on the side of Team 430, but finally manages to top him off as they head over to the bridge. And, you know, Pixel actually really not that far behind. They're at 5% right now. Sky Captain Craig, Nagura, pretty good single target coming out of them.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, Kiki actually was holding on to the Tree of Life, not committing it onto the boss here, even though the whole team seemed to be dropping very low. He didn't manage to heal away those Grievous stacks on anybody. So that must mean that he really wants this Tree of Life for some bigger pull that they're planning on doing here in this area, because it really seems like a situation where you just want to pop your tree and heal everyone up. But if they planned on doing a pull where they need the Tree of Life, then he just needs to hold on to it. So good on him, keeping everyone alive without committing that cooldown. Unfortunately, Inspiration actually goes down to one of those Void Touch Emissaries casts, and the trash on top of it as well.
Yeah, quite dangerous there, and unfortunately the DK follows suit. Sorry, the Fury Warrior follows suit. They're not playing with the DK. Kiki dipping quite low as well. Will have to line of sight the next cast, and, you know, I appreciate it. They're on the side of Pixel. They actually were all using the Alliance Chopper mount, and it just kind of, there was like a biker gang going across the bridge, so nice to be there from our observers earlier, in case you missed it. But Team 430 here with their own struggles, as they do manage to finally kill the Void Emissary. They did have to commit the battle res, as mentioned by Nagura there, because Inspiration did fall. You know, that kind of cast for a Void, especially on something like a Warrior, sometimes it catches you off guard. Of course, one cast won't kill you, but, you know, when you have these heavy mobs, especially an Oarsman in there, which are quite dangerous for tanks, they hit pretty hard, hitting you, and then all of a sudden you dip from a couple melees, and then the hit comes from the Void Emissary. It's enough to finish you off if you're not paying attention. So Inspiration got caught there with his tail between his legs. Fortunately, they did have the battle res, as NoPixel is getting started on that first Vermin Trapper, actually finishing that first Vermin Trapper and starting to carve some of the way to the Council of Captains encounter.
And unfortunately, one of them who released, they came back through the bridge, but there was this one Enforcer that they skipped earlier, and this time around they didn't have Shadow Meld ready, so they have to finish off this Enforcer that they didn't really plan on finishing off, but maybe there's some trash they can skip later, so maybe it will pay off later on. Either way, Team 430 now finally done with this trash pull, out of battle rests for both teams, and Pixel, to be honest, I mean, yeah, they're 7% behind in trash, but they're not doing so bad at all. It's all going to be about those pulls that they do later on and how efficient they're going to be, especially in the Ring of Booty. Like, how many trash packs are they actually going to pull on top of Ludwig or on top of Drothak?
Yeah, a lot of the efficiency really does come to that Ring of Slooty. Pixel here 22%, but part of the issue or benefit to them is we saw Team 430 how they performed this dungeon last night. I'm not sure how heavily they're going to change their routing. We'll see once they get to that Ring of Booty, but they move so slowly that, as you mentioned earlier, they actually ended up losing the match, even though they had a huge advantage because of the reset from one last chance going in yesterday. So something that that Pixel can take advantage of as they get started on the Council of Captains before Team 430 here. They, of course, are inferior in trash percentage, but as you mentioned, it's something that they can easily recover with efficiency later on.
Yeah, and we see Pixel actually engaging the boss here. Now, this time around, we do not have Eudora active, so definitely a little bit easier, because having Eudora active on a Grievous affix is so dangerous, because the shots do so much damage, and then on top of that, you also have to heal the Grievous away. So this time, only having Raoul and Jolly, which usually not that dangerous. I mean, there's definitely things that can go wrong. Komi actually dropping very low there. Now, there's a bruise on the floor, so if the bosses, actually get hit by brews like the crit or the haste brew, then it can actually cause a lot of trouble for the tank, as we just saw there.
Yeah, and part of the issue as well is he actually got caught in the whirlwind kind of charge, essentially, from Captain Jolly, and what that does is it puts a very heavy bleed on you. So he got caught in that, and a couple of melees with probably the buffs, like you mentioned, actually almost kind of destroyed him there. Pain suppression was used and committed by Onezor there. Probably helped save his life with that 40% DR right now, as more brews are tossed here by the ever so happy bartender behind the bar there. 430, 40% on trash, just about 40% as they finish up a really substantial pull, and they get ready soon to go to the Council of Captains. Something that Pixel has actually done quite well here. We've killed Captain Raoul off, killed Captain Jolly off, excuse me. Only Captain Raoul remains, and after this, we'll have to see exactly, hopefully for them, how efficiently they deal with the remaining trash to catch up.
Yeah, one more thing to note about Team 430, they actually have Cinderella, their rogue, go off to the Ring of Booty to start the NPC event, which most teams in the past, we saw the healers run off and stealth over there to get the NPC started. And Cinderella actually also not managing properly, having a death go through. So didn't somehow aggro them up, not completely sure what happened there, but he did go down, so he will have to stealth back to the group. But Team 430, I mean, I guess it makes sense that they're having the rogue go off because of Grievous. So the team, it's going to be hard to pull a trash pack without having the healer with your group if you have the Grievous affix.
All right, you are. The rogue goes off. Cinderella, unfortunately, does not make it back before midnight and incurs the death there. 3 deaths on the board right now for Team 430 as Pixel sits at 2 and has done a double pull. Actually, I think it was a triple pack pull. So, no, it was a double. So a pretty significant pull nonetheless, especially in this fortified teaming environment for Pixel. And they're handling it quite well right now. One fear coming out of Onezor, unfortunately, but he does fall. We mentioned just how dangerous some of these mobs are and the amount of cleave and random damage they could do to the party members if they're not handled properly. So Onezor, his health just disappeared. He basically got globaled there, but does manage to come back up as one of the battle reses for both teams actually is about to reset at 1 charge right now. 40% for the Pixel and 52% trash for Team 430, who is now working on the Council of Captains.
Yeah, thankfully they did down the boss here to get the respawn there, because once Onezor is down, there's actually no rest for them to get them back up, because they don't have any out of combat rest, right? So definitely good that they did finish off the boss to have to respawn there. Now Team 430 did also start the combat. They're not pulling any trash on top of it yet. They also have the Bloodlust available, actually, Team 430, but don't seem to be committing it yet. Maybe they want to have it on the boss later on. Pixel as well having their Bloodlust ready.
Yeah, Pixel here just doing, you know, kind of a modest pull. We usually see this pack pulled over by, like, when they're waiting for a Ludwig or something like that to spawn, the teams go up, but they're actually combining it with a second pack on the side, and there's usually a Void Emissary at the side there, so I'm not sure exactly what they did with that. Maybe we can get a better view from our observers later, because this is one of the packs guarding the bridge with that Void Emissary that you will have to pass on the way to Harlan Suite. So a bit of interesting and certainly different pathing and routing that we're seeing come from Pixel compared to some other teams, but Team 430 here still working away at this boss. Is an average of 25% remains between the two bosses, Captain Jolly and Captain Raoul. Mostly flawless victory coming in here for them. Their deaths were outside of the bosses. Pixel finishes the rest of the trash here and will likely be going over to start their ring. Now, I'm not sure, Nagura, on the side of Pixel, I didn't see, did anybody pre-start the event for Lightning?
I didn't see.
Okay, well, I guess we'll see.
we will see.
Unless we
no,
close
they did
our
not.
eyes.
There we go. So Ella just now stealthed over, started the event. So it will take quite a while until the pick spawns and until they can continue and have Ludwig spawn. Team 430, on the other hand, they already did start the event earlier, so they will be starting the event a lot faster. Now, I remember last time around, their Fury Warrior was actually doing a lot of damage on the boss that they just downed. This time around, not so much. Not sure if the last time it was just luck or he got a lot of brews on top of him, a lot of friendly brews. Either way, this time around not doing as much damage as the last time, as they are clicking on that pig. It was the Diablo player that got the pig.
You know, it is possible that the Fury Warrior last time around had a lot more 5 buffs. So this time I just don't think it worked out in his favor. He is, of course, a rogue in training. He's not fully achieved his yellow color yet. And you're absolutely right. I have no phone, subtly named the Diablo player by you. Has grabbed the trash here. 54% for Team 430 as they shoot through the bridge trash or side bridge trash that Pixel is still doing here. But issue here for the no phone player as he goes down on Team 430. They commit their battle res to that. That's a bit of a question mark for me because, I mean, okay, it is very dangerous trash, but they did just also kill a Council of Captains. It's not a very far run, especially for something like a DH that could probably just double Fell Rush over and get back into action quickly, but they didn't want to take the chance. They used the battle res and not going to have that for 7.5 minutes now as Pixel has grabbed the Piggy and are getting ready to start on some extra trash while Ludwig von Schnitzel spawns.
So we have the Demon Hunt actually go down one more time. Very unfortunate for Team 430, but they are about to finish up this trash pack, so they should get him back up soon. You see the arrest actually going through from Kiki instead of having him release. Very interesting there as well because, as Lud mentioned, the spawn is very close. Either way, Pixel are fighting fighting on a trash mob here, having the Emissary of Tides as well, and they're pulling Ludwig on top. Oh, okay, so there's the bloodlust that they're committing, which is very interesting to commit the bloodlust on Ludwig, and Team 430 actually doing the exact same thing.
Yeah, I mean, it's not that crazy to see right now because we are in that fortified environment, and as you know, you always let us know, as we all know really at this point, Ludwig scales with fortified. He's a mini boss, and he just has so much health and actually hits quite hard on tanks. Now, Warriors well equipped to deal with dual wielding damage, so the mob swings a lot quicker here on the side of Ludwig. Very good at dealing with that physical blockable damage, so not too much concern for them. But the Fury Warrior going down here for Team 430, and they had used their battle res earlier on I Have No Phone on the DH, so they can't get him up, and he's not really releasing either, but I don't think he can because, oh no, actually he could because he's not in combat, so he won't get stuff thrown on him, but he just stays dead on the floor as they hit 69% trash, and they still have about 40% left on Ludwig, which is a huge amount of health. Pixel sitting at 66% trash, 3 deaths on the board versus Team 436, and is in a bit slightly better shape on Ludwig. Pixel is actually looking in the superior position right now, Nagura.
Yeah, I'm actually super surprised that Pixel is doing so well because we talked about, well, their highest keys are 15 in time, right? And this is an 18. It's like, that's 3 levels higher if my math checks out. Let me use my fingers to count.
We'll have to check backstage for that.
Either way, Pixel is about to down Ludwig here. They have 3 deaths, so there's a 15-second time advantage that they have over Team 430, and Team 430 just now downing Ludwig as well. There's a small trash percentage difference in favor of Team 430, but not a lot to overcome at all for Pixel.
No problem for them. They grab some of the neutral mobs on the side right now, and they're just cleaning it up as Trothak sparkingly approaches the arena in the back there. Now, finally get the res here on the Fury Warrior for Team 430 that does the same thing. They go up and they pull the, I don't know if Brian Scales are even active here, but nonetheless, they pull the one pack overhanging the ledge that is close to the patrol. I'm not sure, yeah, there is the patrol indeed. So they had to get favorable timing for the patrol to come in, and they're doing a double pack pull on the side of Team 430. That's likely going to get them, well, it is teaming, so it'll probably get them in the high 70s, low 80s%, and we've seen most teams, at least yesterday, approach Harlan with about 84% trash, somewhere in that range, and then they finish the rest of it off with Harlan's Cannonball during the boss encounter. Pixel wasting no time and sitting at that 73% trash with just a bit on top of Trothak. We've seen Army committed here from mid as they chew through the boss.
Yeah, so we'll see how the Disc Priest actually handles this boss, because this boss is pretty taxing on the healer, just because you have the Grievous affix, meaning you have to heal the whole group while also having to kite the sharks into those pools on the floor, as you can see right now. So lots of things to do for a healer, and Rest Druids in general, they're pretty good at casting their rejuice and their hots while running, so not the biggest problem for them. But Disc Priest, they do have to cast quite a bit, so interesting to, especially if they want to heal away the Grievous stacks, right? So we'll see how Oncer handles this boss. On the other hand, Team 430 now also engaging Trothak.
They do have that penance on the run as well that they can channel while moving, and I think that has, I can't remember for sure, I mean this is like beta days of BFA, but I think it's a 9-second cooldown, something like that. I'm sure Jack will jump at the opportunity to correct me later, but it is pretty low cooldown, so it's something that he can frequent while kiting that shark, getting enough space between them. So Trothak here at 55% right now for Pixel, who sits at 76% trash, just slightly behind Team 430 is at 83% trash, but 76 on Trothak. So teams are actually quite close together, so we're going to have to start you know, looking at the smaller details, and that comes down to the 3 deaths right now between the teams. Team 430 has 6 versus Pixel's 3, so they're going to have to overcome the dungeon by an extra 15 seconds from this point on in order to try and beat Pixel. And I wouldn't be shocked if, well, to be fair, I don't know if there's any other trash, but Pixel might combine some more trash with Trothak. Trothak is certainly a very long, arduous boss for the teams, and for Melee, it's really not that dangerous if you don't stick your neck into the whirlwind, so why not combine some trash on top of it?
Yeah, one interesting thing I just noticed as well is that the Rogue is playing Asa on Pixel's side, so not actually the Outlaw spec that we usually see out of those Rogues. So maybe some interesting differences in single target damage as well later on, comparing those 2 Rogues, unless Cinderella gets a bunch of 5 buffs. And the fewer warrior damage actually coming out of Team 430, again, topping those damage meters on Trothak. Now, I mean, the last percentage that they need, both of those teams, they're really able to get them while fighting the last boss. But as far as I'm aware, Team 430 the last time around only pulled 1 pack on top of the boss, and both of those teams do not have the Bloodlust available. And generally speaking, if teams do want to pull a lot of the trash on top of Harlan Suite, then they want to commit their Bloodlust as well, just because it's so dangerous. So maybe both of those teams actually not wanting to do that. We'll see.
Yeah, we'll see indeed. Team Pixel is 76. I mean, they need more. Like 80, mid-80s, low 80s% trash, I think, is the bare minimum, especially with teaming that they need to combine on top of Harlan. But they've already killed most of the trash around the area, including the bridge pack. And there is the Void Emissary I was talking about earlier. So they actually melded her, and it looks like they're going to be doing the same thing again right now. In fact, they just might leave her in combat. It doesn't matter if she's in combat until they get all the way up to Harlan's room. I love seeing this multi-alliance chopper gang coming out of No Pixel. Out of this is really fun to me to see. But they do indeed use the Shadow Meld. Actually, the Rogue vanished. Everybody else stayed in combat. He vanished, popped Shroud for the group, and they head upstairs, and now everybody's going to pop Shadow Meld. It's actually a pretty neat skip from them. We usually see 1 or 2 people die on the way. Okay, I spoke too soon. Make that 3 people. So, bit of a sloppy pull. Oarsman gets its cast off as well. Mid falls down. Fortunately, survives the fall, and Onezor gets out of combat, but it looks like they're not done just yet as he runs in and finishes mid off. Onezor safely Shadow Melded on the side and is now casting Master Resurrection to get his teammates up. So I spoke a bit early there.
Yeah, that's actually very unfortunate for Pixel here, because they did have the advantage in the death difference, right? But now, because of those 4 deaths, they're actually 5 seconds behind. Very unfortunate for Pixel, as Team 430 is actually choosing to finish off the Void Emissary and just dealing with the trash. Actually, Inspiration going down as well, so evening up the deaths.
Yeah, they're evening up the deaths, and they'll have +1 on top of that, because I believe I have no phone, and yep, he goes down too. So they just had no option to get them across, because I have no phone did not have Shadow Meld. Neither of them had Shadow Meld available, so they just chose to sacrifice themselves while the others went up. So once again, the death difference is in the favor of Pixel, but only by 1 this time instead of 3. So that's an extra 5 seconds they'll have as Harlan Suite has been pulled here. No Bloodlust committing on top of the trash pack, as you see in the background there, just rotated through. Usually we see teams pop Bloodlust, grab that trash pack, combine it with Harlan Suite, and try to nuke everything together. But since they don't have access to that powerful group CD, they're just going to play it a bit cool here.
Yeah, Team 430 at this point are pretty far ahead in trash. They're 92%, as Pixel is sitting on 76% still. I wonder what Pixel wants to do with all of the trash that they're still missing. Either they want to pull it at the very end of Harlan Suite, making use of the friendly fire damage, or they just want to play it really safe, finish off Harlan Suite first, and then deal with all of the trash. Either way, there's still a lot of the trash they need to make up, while Team 430, they don't have much at all. They only have 8%, which might just be the one pack that we see in this boss area that teams usually pull with Bloodlust, on top of 1 Ravager pack that should be adding up to 100%.
Should be indeed, as Harlan hits 71%, 70% out to Team 430, 10% more, and they'll hit the second phase where the Cannonball Barrage will target every non-tank in the group. So 4 barrages going out, plus those slicing winds will have a 360 degree as opposed to 120 degree, which is 360 divided by 3 Nagura. So yeah, just to make sure we're on the same page, Harlan Suite here, 50% on Pixel, already in that second phase, but they got to get a move on with the trash. At this point, I'm just thinking maybe they're going to kill the boss and then do the trash, but just as I say that, I think we saw a grip going in on one of the enforcers as they get some more of that percentage chiseled through. Comey just having so much struggle right now. Rallying Cry is popped here for Pixel, but he just can't get healed through that 4 Grievous stack. you know, I'm sure Jack will chime in later, but once a Disc Priest starts falling behind on Grievous, it's very difficult for them to catch up, as far as I know.
Yeah, you can see the whole group just, you know, sitting on those 4 stacks. The ones are definitely struggling to keep the group alive. But once the boss heat reaches 30% HP, they should be able to get him down pretty quickly. Team 430, on the other hand, they reached their 100% trash at this point. So once they finish up Harlan Suite, they're going to be done. Well, Pixel still has to do 15% trash. Very unfortunate for them. It was looking really good for Pixel throughout this whole dungeon, but now we're still having to do 15% trash. I very highly doubt that they can do it over Team 430 just finishing off Harlan Suite.
No, there's no way, and there's still people in 4 stacks of Grievous. One's himself's there, Elo's there. He's just having so much struggle. His mana's at 30% now. No staff proc to save today either, as Harlan Suite falls to 20% here for Team 430. They back into the corner. Kiki staying safely out of the reach if any of those slicing wins or accidentally getting clipped by anything. Huge trash pull here for Pixel right now. Comey going down immediately. That was a very wishful thinking pull. That is a lot of damage going in without Bloodlust on top of it. That's going to be a full team wipe for Pixel, and that's all they need as Team 430 takes the first match.
430 with a bit of struggles here in this freehold, but I think both groups definitely had their fair share. But one of the things that stands out the most with 430 on that one, Tettles, was their just rabid attraction to Void Emissaries. That was just their undoing.
All right, so in normal life keys, you'll end up pulling a bunch of Void Emissaries because most of the time your group doesn't have 5 Shadow Melds available to you. However, whenever you were playing a full Night Elf group, as 430 was, you should be skipping Void Emissaries as much as possible because they are just a huge damage sink. 430 ends up pulling, like, the first pull of the instance actually has a Void Emissary in it too, and so they actually ended up pulling 3 Void Emissaries across the whole entire instance, which ends up just costing you a ton of time, and it is very dangerous for your tank. As you can actually see right here, Inspiration ends up going down to this Queen's Decree hide because he in fact doesn't take the name literally and doesn't hide, so he ends up going down to it. Overall though, Pixel looked like they were going to be in position to be able to take the whole entire match off of some 430 mistakes with Ludwig and one person being dead for as long as they were, but overall Pixel's strategy is just a little bit slower than 430's, even when 430 is doing more of these live key style pulls. I know we talked in the beginning, and I didn't know if it was going to be as much of a detriment for 430, but I think I've changed my mind very quickly on this. And 430 needs to be able to make use of their group Shadow Meld on most of the members of the team. Because, like, having a full entire group that can, like, skip Void Emissaries, skip important trash packs or something like that, and then them just, like, not using it, whether it be due to comfort or just not knowing how to practice it, because it does require a significant amount of practice to be able to get these group skips off. 430 should definitely be able to know how to do them, and they should be looking to utilize them as much as possible.
No question under that one. And seeing those kind of execution issues is always very important. I mean, so you mentioned previously about the disc with Grievous onto that one. I don't think most of the pulls...
You couldn't wait.
I couldn't. I mean, I don't think most of those pulls were really too bad, but one of the things I noticed was how he was trying to top off everybody at once. And that's one thing Druid can do pretty well, especially if they have, like, Cultivation kicks in, they have the extra Mastery stack, and they can start beefing up everybody all at once. With this, they really had... I was really expecting to see more out of Onezor in terms of single target healing these individual players up one at a time. Make sure that you're isolating any of the 3 or 4 stack Grievuses, getting rid of the 1 or 2s as many as possible, then dealing with that last one at the very end. And I didn't really see that, so I'm interested in seeing the next dungeon, which is going to be Shrine of the Storm on Necrotic, because I really don't want to see Well of Existence out of either of the healers, because if we've seen how rough it's been, I kind of like Vitality Conduit to help out, just because it's more of a health redirect from a proc percentage or proc basis, instead of building up Well of Existence reserves and then just dumping it all into Sloot whenever he doesn't kite for me.
Yeah. I mean, what do you think about those healer essences, Nagura?
I mean, I totally agree with you that they actually have to change that for Necrotic, though, and we've seen even some Western teams not change up their essences for Necrotic. And as you mentioned, if you just have the whole proc go into Necrotic, that's really not something you want. And also talent changes as well. We've seen some teams run different challenges just because of Necrotic, just because you don't want to have those kind of procs go into the Necrotic stacks.
And we'll have to see onto that one. So we'll be taking a quick break before we go into game number 2. Don't go anywhere, guys. The MDI will be back right after this. Hello and welcome back as Team 430 is up 1 against Pixel as we're getting ready to get ourselves going in Shrine of the Storm.
So we saw a Shrine yesterday, if I'm not mistaken, and it was it was a dungeon by the end of it. Certainly actually quite clean for both teams, but just so much throwing between, I believe, AAA and Black Mamba at the end of the dungeon. So hopefully these teams learn from those lessons and manage to clean it up. But in a dungeon with so many smallies, for lack of a better term, just insignificant low health mobs present in the dungeon, Necrotic gets to be quite out of hand quite quickly, Nagura.
Yeah, most definitely. Especially if you do those kind of snapping pulls that we see most of those teams do, because all of the mobs just immediately start hitting an attack. And you can see Komi just having 45 or
66.
Oh, 66. Sorry, I need better glasses apparently. Mine aren't big enough. Either way, Komi going down, unfortunately not being able to get healed through all of those necrotic stacks. Didn't even seem to start kiting either. So either way, they did get him back up. Did have to commit the battle rest though, so they're not going to have that available to them. Well, Team 430 also struggling.
Yeah, okay. I'm going to call this one out here. The pull, he's not only did he start kiting, they used a battle res when he could have just released from the dungeon and come in at the very beginning. And then on top of it all, he never even used his shield wall when he had 66 stacks of necrotic. I mean, I don't know about that one. I think he kind of deserved that death there. His inspiration did run off and reset here. He has one regrowth stack on him, one rejuve stack on him, excuse me, as Wild Growth goes out from Kiki right now, trying to heal up the rest of the group. That took a bit of splash damage as well. So one death on either side, but no Pixel, Pixel, I keep saying no Pixel because of the GTA 5 RP, but Pixel has a no battle res available for the 8 minutes or so, which could be pretty significant with some of the trash coming up, including Acusir. And I mean, we know, and even some teams now don't do the checkpoint with the Ritualist after the second boss, so if you have a death at any point, they're going to have to run back, and likely there's going to be some skips, so I'm already kind of worried for Pixel.
Actually just want both of the teams to get all of the checkpoints and clear all the way so they don't have to do anything bad if they have a team wipe. Because let's be honest here, those teams, they're not the cleanest teams from the Eastern region that we've seen so far. So I personally would like them to play pretty safe, and if anyone goes down, they could just release and walk all the way back, because that can just easily happen, especially if you have those affixes. If you have necrotic and you have tyrannical in this dungeon, just anything can really happen. You see Team 430 now on 10% trash. They did finish off one more of these caster packs, and those pulls are actually super dangerous just because of all of the attendants that you pull on top of each other, and the spiritualists who constantly need to interrupt it if they cast their heal, and then you have the water blast, which just, you know, an insane amount of damage, especially if you have a lot of necrotic stacks and you're unhealable, basically.
Yeah, speaking of Komi, just ran away again to get 49 necrotic stacks. So one more necrotic stack, you would literally not have been healable. He had a lot of healing debuff there of 98 reduction, but it fortunately did get away in time, as Pixel is just working to finish off the remaining of the trash on the stairs. Now, some teams from here on out just use mass stealth and go straight to Acusir. Some teams chew through this trash. We'll have to see what Pixel does. We haven't seen them in action in this dungeon. Actually, we haven't seen either of these teams in action in this dungeon this week. 430 indeed does get the mass stealth up, and they will be heading over to Acusir's platform. Both teams have done this as they wait for Acusir to spawn. Now, I'm not seeing any extra trash pulled on top of... Oh, they actually pulled up the stairs, but I don't know if that was intentional, because nobody else in the group on Pixel's moving as Komi dies, so he didn't manage to get his Shadow Meld off properly. They're going to have to do the res on the side. Ones are casting Mass Resurrection here, as Team 430 is actually dealing with the very trash that killed Pixel's tank.
Yeah, Team 430 actually dealing with this trash pack, as you mentioned. And again, all of these trash packs here before the first boss, before Aquaseer, are just pretty dangerous. You see inspiration dropping so low again. Just seems like there's a bunch of casts that went through, and with all of the necrotic stacks, you see the Cenarian Ward going out, but it's just not healing anything. Kiki just struggling to keep inspiration alive. And finally, the necrotic stacks fell off, so inspiration can go back in and finish off the rest of the trash pack, and they should be fine from now on. But Komi actually getting stunned from one of those Templars.
And he has 72 stacks of necrotic. I think that's a 7, not a 1. Yeah, he's literally unhealable. I mean, he's going to go down. You know, it's ironic. One of the most dangerous mobs, because they're in a high group, are those little yellow blobs in the dungeon, because the tank grabs aggro and they each give you necrotic every time they successfully melee. So Komi had 72 stacks of necrotic. That's a huge damage over time component. Plus, of course, you're just not healable. So he goes down. They don't have the battle res as mentioned earlier. 5 minutes left on that. Mid goes down here, and they're just looking to finish off these very dangerous casters. Those water blasts going out right now are what almost killed inspiration earlier. They do an incredible amount of damage, even in a tyrannical environment, and it looks like they're not going to be able to get the job done, as they're all pretty much healed up. There's no interrupts going out on the Spiritualist. One Zora is the only one alive with Fame. Fame should be going down momentarily, and there's no way they can survive for long enough to get the Shadow Meld off on one Zora. He's just kind of running around trying to buy time, but that's going to be all she wrote, likely.
Yeah, it seems like he wants to kite a little bit longer just to get his Shadow Meld back up. We saw the knockback come out and the free come out of the freeze. Now he's just trying to kite, trying to get the Shadow Meld back up. You can see the cooldown on the Rogue and on the Demon Hunter. Unfortunately, we don't see it on the Priest, but it should be around the same timing as the rest of the group. And there we go. He did manage to pull off the Shadow Meld, but at this point, the rest of the group is already back. So it only really saved them the 5 seconds from the death. Didn't really save them anything else. Team 430 did engage Aquaseer and are also committing the Bloodlust to the boss.
Yeah, it's weird why they didn't just choose one or the other. They could have either group released and all Shadow Melded back together, or just waited for him to res everyone once he Shadow Melded. But in this way, it's the worst of every world. In fact, Komi doesn't even get the Shadow Meld off. He just dies on the way. So it seemed that they should have just waited for one Zor to get that successful Shadow Meld off, as scary as it was. Inspiration, having a little charge past the boss there, almost went right off the edge. A bit scary, but we do not charge pathing sometimes for Warriors. Puts you behind the mob, quite frustratingly so. So Team 430 here, 70% on accuracy. They're approaching rapidly for that transition phase at 50, where of course will split into those 3 well-designed Aqualings. God, I love this boss thing. As Pixel is at 13% still, and is dealing with the trash that initially wiped him, has already caused him 2 deaths on top of it just because Komi failed the skip, and they do have Aquaseer spawned in the back here, but things are starting to unravel a bit, and not to mention the 6 death difference on the board.
Wait a second, wasn't this trash pack that they were trying to skip in the first place and what they wiped to because Komi wasn't able to de-aggro them? I just feel like either way, Komi having a lot of trouble again, going up to over 20 stacks, but this time around he starts kiting earlier, so he should be able to survive. I think the biggest problem was Komi actually getting hit by the Templar stun, which is a frontal cone cast that is easily dodgeable because the mob does not follow you around. It just it just fixates you and then casts, so you can just walk out of it basically. But Komi already getting stunned twice, unfortunately for Pixel there, and going down, just getting too many necrotic stacks while he's stunned, and then going down afterwards. Team 430, on the other hand, have a death coming in from the Surging Rush. Yeah, very great boss, Sloot.
I mean, it's not my fault, you know, get hit and fall off the edge, just to wave it. But fortunately for them, the corpse is on the platform, so Kiki's able to get the battle res off. Neither team now having a battle res available for about 3 minutes, so certainly backs to the wall right now, especially after Aquaseer. A lot of danger coming in with the mobs. And notice how these teams also have not pulled Heldis. We did see Heldis pulled yesterday by who was it? Black Mamba and AAA. So they did pull Heldis on top of it, dangerous as it might be for the tank with the stacking necrotic. But Heldis casts so frequently that necrotic's really not much of a concern for the tank. So these teams are just playing it generally safe and making their healer's life a bit easier, at of course the cost of clear efficiency here. Pixel 7 deaths still versus Team 430's 2 now because of the death there for I Have No Phone. I mean 25-second death difference between them. It's still very early in the dungeon, Nagura. So let's not spell disaster yet just for that death difference.
Yeah, Team 430 did now actually pull Heldis on top of the boss, so they just wanted to play it a little bit safer. Didn't pull Heldis at the very start, but just waited for the intermission phase to be over and then get Heldis on top. Now this is going to mean that it's going to be a little bit less efficient as with teams that pull it from the get-go, just because once the boss dies, Heldis is not going to be dead. So they will have to finish Heldis off after Aquaseer and going to have to spend a little bit more time. But it's safer this way because you don't have Heldis AoEing your whole team throughout the whole boss fight. So there we go. Heldis needs to be finished off still. Team 430 are on 28% trash. So Pixel quite a bit behind just because, of course, the wipes they were having. And I'm also wondering what Pixel is saving their Bloodlust for, because they've been holding it for 9 minutes at this point. Oh, there we go. Intermission phase.
Well, it is a well-known fact that this last final Aqualing in the transition phase is the most evil and dangerous of the 3. So killing it in a very prompt manner is very important as the Aqualings split around the arena. Now, they have a nice bunch up of 2 of them there, so good cleave coming in for the melee. You can see they kind of get in there as quickly as possible as Komi makes sure to tank the other one. Now, you always want to stay in melee range of these, else they'll cast Water Blast on various members of the group, and it hurts way more than their pretty insignificant melee. So doing well there. And, you know, also just one thing to point out, 1-0's damage on this boss was a fair bit higher, almost double the amount of Kiki's on the side of Team 430. So perhaps one of the advantages of Dispriest. But then again, Kiki also not exactly playing that offensively. We've seen some Restaurateurs absolutely just pump out crazy damage. In fact, yesterday we saw, you were noting one of the Restaurateurs just doing insane amount of damage using High Noon Trade and triple undulating tides on top of it. So looks like Kiki's just taking it a bit easier here, as Pixel should be easily, hopefully, thankfully, downing Akusir, who is now at 70%. Team 430 dealing with this Void Emissary that most teams opt to skip, though, Nagura.
Yeah, and one thing, I mean, I don't actually dislike the fact that they used the Bloodlust for the intermission phase here, just because Necrotic actually does make the intermission phase more dangerous on top of having Tyrannical as well. Just because you need to be in melee range so they don't cast that Sea Blast, right? Which just does an insane amount of damage. And if you are in melee range and off-tank them, then you do get Necrotic stacks applied from those Aqualings. So if the whole group does have Necrotic stacks on them and then you have to heal the AoE damage as well, it's pretty dangerous. So I don't dislike the fact that Pixel used it for just for a little bit of safety. Now they do single pull Heldis though, so that's pretty inefficient. So they have to single target her down. Team 430 on the other hand did go through that area pretty quickly. As you mentioned, did kill the Void Emissary, not choosing to skip it, and that's something Team 430 is not really good at. Tettles just talked about it in the analyst clip. He said that they're not really good at shadow melting or using their shadow melt to its full potential.
Yeah, I mean, the reasoning they did it is because we do know Void Emissaries have true sight, and therefore you can't just shroud through them with a rogue. So they killed it off in order to be able to safely shroud afterwards past Rune Carver's Soren, one of the other mini bosses. Speaking of mini bosses, the third mini boss in the dungeon, the large elemental on the bridge, I'm forgetting the name of it right now, but the Guardian Elemental, there it is. Usually, we've seen actually kind of a mix between the West and East of killing it now sometimes, because we do know this dungeon has rebalanced in trash. Cinderella, unfortunately, falling there on the side, did not manage to get the proper skip off with the rest of the team, so rather than putting the team in combat, he decided to die. They res him up on the other side safely of the bridge and are now dealing with the apprentices that lie before the second boss of the dungeon with Brother Ironhull and Gale Caller Faye. Pixel here also dealing with the Void Emissary. I'm not really sure. These teams love their Void Emissaries, but nonetheless, they do decide to chisel through it and will likely be using their Shadow Melt past Rune Carver's Soren at some point as well.
Yeah, and Team 4, this area here is also pretty dangerous because, mainly because of the Necrotic affix, really. Just because there is not that much room to kite at all in this area, because they did not finish off the bridge and the elemental, therefore there's no way for the tank to kite backwards. And this small little area doesn't even provide that much space to kite in a circle either. So once you have those small little initiates, which just apply Necrotic to your tank on every single melee attack, it is going to be pretty dangerous for them. That's why Inspiration actually goes pretty slowly, but Cinderella, unfortunately, going down very early in the pool. They do have one Battle Res available, and it's coming up from Kiki immediately.
Yeah, Cinderella just not making it to the ball tonight. Team 430 here, 4 deaths on the board. Now, once again, no Battle Res for another 8 minutes, and they still have to deal with what is a pretty scary boss. And Igor, I'm going to be curious with these two teams, because neither of the two teams yesterday did it. They didn't use that ledge strat that avoids the tornadoes. I'm not really sure why they're not choosing to get that going, but we'll see if either of these two teams decides to use that. What seems to be at least generally accepted as a more superior or safer strategy, for lack of any other term. So Team 430 here, chewing through the rest of their trash as Pixel is dealing with a smaller apprentice pool right before Soren's room.
Yeah, we saw Team 430 actually dealing with it pretty well. They didn't have too many problems with that Necrotic stack here on Inspiration. Now they only have the Initiates left. They want to make sure that they succeed them pretty well, so Inspiration doesn't go down because of the Necrotic. But the good part about Necrotic is that they actually changed it over the course of BFA, that it does disappear off of the tank as soon as he's out of combat. So once those Initiates are down, the Necrotic will disappear and he's going to be just fine. And they're going to be able to engage the boss without any Battle Res ready though.
Yeah, it's going to be scary. And it looks like they are going up there. We can see the yellow or Star World marker already up on the ledge, but it seems like the only person going up is Kiki. Actually, no, the bosses are being slowly dragged over, so the melee just wants to get their damage in before heading up. Maybe not. Maybe they're just staying down there and it's really just Kiki going up, so he's having a safer, easier time. But the melee are standing in that kind of double boss cleave area, and they're just hoping they don't get hit, and the healer getting some solar wraths in from the top as well. Elo going down on the side of Pixel, unfortunately. That have they pulled Soren? Yeah. Rune Carver's Soren is in there, so we've seen him pulled sometimes, but pretty rarely. Just does a tremendous amount of damage with his carved flesh channel that you want to be standing in that rune on the floor, and that rune provides a 70% damage reduction buff when you stand in it for either yourself or, of course, enemies. So you have to dance well around it as Komi dipping quite low here, gets out and right back in as those Necrotic stacks reset. But Elo, unfortunately, they do have the res, but they're choosing to hold on to it. And Rune Carver's Soren has a lot of health in Nagura.
Yeah, I actually wonder why Elo even went down, because it seemed like his body was inside the zone that does provide the damage reduction. So maybe he just walked into the zone too late with the carved flesh on him, or it just died through it, which the carved flesh does do a lot of damage even if you stand inside. As you can see, Elo just dropping very low there. So either way, Elo going down costing him a little bit of time, especially because they now committed the battle rest. So, you know, they were just wasting some time. They could have committed the battle rest either immediately or just not committed at all. You have to make one decision. If you just do it half-assed, you just do the middle way, then you just lose a lot of time. As Team 430 is still fighting Gale Caller Faye and Brother Ironhall, and yeah, they're not using this ledge strategy, it's just having Kiki up there.
Yeah, and Inspiration goes down just as they pop their Bloodlust. They don't have a battle res available. They're gonna need to reset this boss or have a full team wipe. Obviously, option A is superior to option B, but that is just the lesser of two evils. You don't want to be doing either of those. Here comes the reset right now. Inspiration just got clocked. Brother Ironhall, we do know now, this doesn't happen often, but Brother Ironhall gets a very substantial buff, Blessing of Iron or Blessing of the Tides, something like that. So it just gives him a tremendous amount of increased physical damage done. So if Inspiration gets hit by the melee, hit by the frontal, in combination with, let's say, you know, a melee from Gale Caller Faye or a tornado or something, that's it. Easy one shot, and that's exactly what happened. Inspiration does go down. They have to reset the boss, and I mean, he went down the second they popped Bloodlust. So they just wasted their entire Bloodlust on this, which opens up the path for Pixel, who is now doing their Guardian Elemental skip on the bridge to start to catch up just a bit. They're still behind by 3 deaths. They still have all of the trash in front of the Council boss here to do. Elo going down yet again, and they don't have a battle res. He's just gonna have to say Elo from the other side now.
Unfortunately, they did pull the patrol, which was not really intended. So if they wouldn't have pulled the patrol, then they could have just mass rest Elo up. But at this point, they just have to finish it off. Thankfully, it's only 2 mobs, so there should be a right to do that. But yeah, Team 430 actually losing so much time because of this Bloodlust that they committed. One more thing as well to note about this boss is that the zone on the ground that you can see that looks the exact same way as the Zorn zone that does the damage reduction. The zone here though actually does remove all the debuffs off of you. Their Demon Hunter going down, they don't have a rest, so I'm not completely sure if they want to just, oh yeah, they're just resetting one more time. They just don't want to waste a lot of time and finishing off the boss with only 2 DPS.
Yeah, I mean, this is just a double reset here. I mean, look, it's better than the alternative of full team wipe and they have to do all the skips again, certainly, but this is 2 resets already. They've committed so many resources, just not including Bloodlust. I mean, they're going to have their battle res coming up in 3 minutes, so they'll have that if needed really soon enough. Coney here starting to accrue a lot of necrotic stacks as to deal with a lot of the apprentice trash in front of the boss that Team 430 is having quite the struggle with. Teams still at 3 deaths difference apiece. We did have the Demon Hunter go down on the side of 430 versus the Rogue on Pixel side. Comey just not having a lot of room to kite right now, but he decides to just brute force it right now and just chill on top of the mobs, but it says that's too much and starts to head off, resetting those necrotic stacks, but so many of those water blasts are coming through.
Yeah, so what I wanted to mention about the zone on the ground here on Brother Ironhall and Gale Caller Faye is the zone actually clears all of your debuffs, so it also clears necrotic. That's something the tanks should be playing around because, you know, you can reset the necrotic otherwise too by just leaping away and cutting the boss, but it's a lot simpler if you can just make one step into the zone, as Inspiration actually just showed on Team 430, resetting his necrotic there. But yeah, this time around they actually have to finish off the boss if they don't want Pixel to catch up to them, because Pixel, they are behind in raw damage speed, but they're ahead in trash. They have more, a lot more trash than Team 430 once they finish off all of this area in front of the boss. So Pixel can choose to skip a lot of the trash later on. So Team 430 definitely needs to down this boss now without any more problems.
This is certainly closer than we think, at least at this point in the dungeon. We do know there's a lot of danger coming up in Volzithstrom, and depends what the 2 teams want to do. Neither team, actually, one of the teams, of course, running an Unholy DK, so they technically have that potential to one-phase the boss. We'll see if that's even part of their plan in the first place. But we got to get through the second boss first, as the initiates are pulled here, the final initiates before they approach the second boss, as Team 430 finally gets Gale Caller Faye down to 35%, Brother Ironhall sitting at 71%, and Brother Ironhall drops his reinforcing word right now. They have to pre-move out of it in order to not let the bosses, because as you mentioned, Nagura drops all debuffs, including on the bosses though, so any damage over time or any debuff effects were just cleared on both bosses because Inspiration was just a bit too slow to move out. He gets clipped by the frontal and as a result rooted. You can see the buff up on Brother Ironhall right now. He is huge, and he will do a lot of damage to your tank if you're not paying attention there. Bit of a tornado clip there for the Fury Warrior, but able to be healed up by Kiki, as Pixel has committed their Bloodlust to the pull and are starting to catch up.
And look at the Assassin Rogue doing so much damage here in the opener with the Bloodlust as well. The army also coming out from mid, from the Unholy DK, so both of them doing insane amounts of bursts here. Maybe there's a chance that they can catch up just with their single on-target damage. Now they also have their battle rest available soon, both of those teams. So if anything goes wrong, they do have one rest available to them. Both of the teams only having one person that can rest though. So on Team 430 it's only the Rest of Druid, and on Team Pixel it's only the DK. And now I'm not completely sure how good a Disc Priest is at doing damage with the buff on the very last boss. Oh no, 2 people actually getting hit by the frontal.
You hate to see it. Oof. Double death there, and they can only get one of them up as the battle res is just about to pop. I'm going to be curious to see if what are they going to do? Are they going to commit? They've already committed their Bloodlust in so many CDs. They do have a battle res available. Fame does get pulled up, and it looks like they're going to try to finish this boss as a 4-man group, whereas Team 430, of course, had that struggle earlier, decided to reset it immediately. Fair to them, though, it's their tank that died, so they kind of had to reset it, at least the first time during their Bloodlust. Brother Ironhall, though, for Team 430 is down to 25%, so they will be killing the boss off soon, whereas Pixel, I mean, once Pixel gets Faye down, they can kill the boss, but it's going to take them so long.
Yeah, most definitely. I mean, they can... No, not even that will make sense. Yeah, they're just going to be behind in dungeon speed just because of this one death here. And you can see, actually I'll also wonder why they didn't rest the Rogue, because the Rogue seemed like he was doing quite a bit more damage than the Demon Hunter. And the Demon Hunter also does not have the meta available, so interesting choice on the rest there. Either way, Team 430 are downing the boss right now, so they're going to move on. They are on 61% trash, so they probably have to deal with some of those Enforcers, which can definitely cause a lot of trouble with the necrotic stacks.
And it looks like they heeded your word earlier, and they are killing the Ritualist. That opens up the shortcut coming from the beginning of the dungeon. Should you wipe later on by killing this Ritualist, you can see that kind of little sparkly brazier in the corner. Now, that will be an available teleport from Aquasir's area over here should somebody die. A bit of damage coming in on Onezor as he takes one of the clips from the Tornadoes with a 5-stack, and a lot of cast going in for Faye. Nobody's interrupting them, but Onezor manages to finally drop his stacks right before what would have been a lethal hit from her Slicing Winds goes through by standing in the zone from Brother Ironhall right now. Galecaller Faye finally falls here, and now we start the long grind of killing 60% of a Tyrannical boss's health for Pixel for Brother Ironhall with a 4-man group. That's going to take them a while.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I wonder, at this point, they might as well just pull like an Enforcer on top, maybe, like the Patrol that we see other teams pull on top, because if it's going to take so long, you might as well just cleave another ad on top of it. Either way, this is going to take them a long time, as Team 430 did down the Ritualist that does enable this skip, and now they're going to do a Shadow Mail skip to get past this this trash area that no one really wants to deal with. I don't think I've seen a single team that wanted to deal with this room that we just saw Team 430 skip. They have to do a lot of those bridge packs now. We will see how that goes, especially because of those tentacles that require the tank to stay in melee range, so therefore he cannot kite away if he does have a lot of necrotic stacks.
Yeah, certainly not. And as we've seen already in the dungeon, they're not running Dwarf either, so they have no way to get rid of those necrotic stacks with Stone Skin, or Stone Form, excuse me, on that 2-minute cooldown. Brother Ironhall here, 20%, so it looks like Pixel is chewing through well as we see Tree of Life pop by Kiki right now, just making sure everyone's healed up nice and healthy. But really, most of the danger damage in this pack comes on the tank, as you have to move around constantly for Mental Assault and make sure that the team is helping you interrupt Rip Mine. But I say that too soon, as Cinderella drips low and procs cheat death. Inspiration has double Rip Mine cast on him. You can see that 2-stack debuff. That's 20% max health reduction after a very substantial Shadow Nuke. That was really close, because on top of the 35 necrotic stacks, that is a nightmare to heal. So they got a lucky one there. Anything longer, one more cast would have gone through. Mobs lived a bit longer, that would have been a tank death easily.
Yeah, now they do have the battle res available for Team 430, so if something goes wrong, just like this close call on the tank, then they can get them back up. But yeah, one more bridge pack they have to do, and then they're basically done. They only have to deal with the 2 Dweller packs in front of the next boss, and then they can get the rest of the percentage with the eels from the last boss room, and the Denizen trash pack that is standing in front of the last boss as well.
Yeah, so Team 430, I think with the rebalance percentages in this dungeon on non-teaming, it's about 84% that you need. It used to be 80% in the previous season, but because of the rebalance, it's about 84, as the Eels give less percent now. So they should be able to hit it with the remaining Dwellers in the next room, as Pixel is now chewing through their Ritualist as well, opening up that shortcut just in case. They said it's 70% trash, and we'll be moving on to the bridge momentarily as well. Team 430 getting right in on the action on the Dwellers right now. We can see an Emissary of Tides on the right side, very dangerous combined in this Dweller pack because it does prevent any form of interrupt or crown control, as we know. So these Dwellers will just free cast Lash on the group. They've done well with the first one, and they've already started the RP or the role playing in order to start the Lord Stormsong event. Now they move over here with the Emissary of Tides, and they don't care to pull it out. They just want to cleave everything down together as quickly as possible.
Yeah, and Pixel dealing with the same mobs that Team 430 was dealing with earlier, the Enforcer and the Ritualist. Now they will probably do a skip here as well, and they can just leave out some of the trash on the bridge that Team 430 had to kill, just because Pixel did have a higher percentage of trash when they got to the boss before. So they can definitely skip something here if they choose to do so. Team 430 on the other hand, they're done with the Dwellers, so they are gonna engage Lord Stormsong once their RP is over. And this boss in theory should not be causing any trouble for them, but it is a tyrannical environment, so you definitely want to watch out for it anyway.
Lord Stormsong already down to 90% there. And yeah, I mean, you're absolutely right. Not the most dangerous boss in the world, but, you know, any combination of a Rip of Mind or something like that on a low melee member can do a substantial amount of damage. Void Bolt needs to be properly interrupted. You need a 2-man DPS rotation interrupt or a 15-second DR interrupt on him. One of those once in a while will be that Spell Reflect on a 25-second cooldown. Just came back up for Inspiration now. As he does use it, and immediately reflects a pretty substantial amount of health back at Lord Stormsong. Pixel here on the trash right now on the bridge, but so much damage on Komi, they're not able to stabilize. We have Pain Suppression running. It should fall off in just 3 seconds here. He goes down. They don't have a battle res, and all those mobs are anywhere between 10 and 50% HP. There's no way, I don't think at least, that they're going to finish this up, but they're sure as heck trying right now as they cleave everything down, and it actually looks like they might be able to. There's a caster, a Ritualist there, the Depthbringer rather, that's still at 50% HP, but these don't exactly melee very hard, so as long as you're getting interrupts on their dangerous cast, I think they'll sneak by this one, Nagura.
Yeah, unfortunately, we also had a death on Team 430 for the Fury Warrior as the Mindbender mind-controlled the Fury Warrior on the very first cast, because there were not enough orbs for him to reach 50% HP through the orb damage. He had to jump into the pool that you can see in the back there, and he didn't jump out fast enough, so once he got out of the mind control, he just died right there, so they had to commit the battle rest to get him back up. Second mind control on Kiki though, going a lot better there this time around, and now they're out of battle rests, so they have to be careful as the warrior actually just got stunned back there from the orbs.
Do you remember that time when they started the boss and you said not really that much could go wrong on this boss, and then they had a death, and now
I said they still have to watch out because it's tyrannical.
That's true, but it's hard to watch out when you're underwater. It's difficult to see under that foggy, evil shadow water. But Team 430 here, 86% trash, still slightly above, I believe, what they need to be at, as we mentioned in the last stream. Lord Stormsong at the last 1/3 of HP as he now just hits sub 30 with another big Spell Reflect worth of 3% boss health damage on a tyrannical boss from Inspiration there. Pixel, 85% trash. They're actually over clearing here. This extra bridge trash is going to put them close to 90%, so I'm not sure what they're going to skip. At this point, they certainly don't need to do anything else here leading to Lord Stormsong's room. They don't need to touch the Dwellers on either side, and I guess a couple of the Eels don't really need to be touched either. We'll see. Team 430 here, 20% on Lord Stormsong. They're certainly in the prime position to take this match. I don't want to caster curse them, but we did see a lot of issue from our two Eastern teams yesterday competing in this dungeon on Volzith. I mean, it was just wipe after wipe after wipe between both teams. Yeah,
that was definitely some interesting dungeon to watch. But either way, one small tip that I just wanted to mention for the Mindbender here is that there's actually all of your defensive buffs that you have as your on your character do get applied once you are mind controlled as well. So for example, Demon Hunters, they do have the passive magic damage reduction on them. Once they are mind controlled, you just want to try to use any sort of physical attacks that you have available to you because they do get less magic damage. And then on top of that, if you have any sort of form that you can get out of, like Moonkins for example, they do have more armor in that form, so they want to try to go out of the Moonkin form once they do get mind controlled. Unfortunately, no Moonkins in the MDI.
Imagine seeing a Moonkin in these dungeons, Nagura.
I've never seen one before in my life.
We as well live in a fantasy world here, but Team 430 has finished off Lord Stormsong, is headed down into the underwater passage where those very dangerous jellies will stun you for 8 seconds, and you can't get out of it with any form of immunities. So they're being extra careful. As you can see, the Fury were absolutely hugging the top of this pathway, making sure that he doesn't get hit, but a lot of damage in right off the bat on mid, who was just the brunt of the Rip Mind. He's not getting a dispel at all. There's just no...
he's mind controlled, yeah.
Oh, what a bad combo. Ones are getting mind controlled and the Rip Mind going in. Now, the problem is you can't really fault...
Not doing enough damage.
This is... Yeah, okay, they're good. They got him out. But you can't really blame mid for this because I'm sure those at home are looking and are going, well, he has anti-magic shell. Why don't you just anti-magic shell? Now, it goes twofold. He wouldn't pre-anti-magic shell the rip mine. He's waiting for the mine control to go off. But once he saw that he got the rip mine cast on him, he was taking damage from it, and their healer was mind controlled, why would you not pop your anti-magic shell?
Yeah.
It would have saved your life there. So, bit of a misplay for them, and now they had a death because of it. They will have a battle res coming up in about 20 seconds, so that is a bit of their saving grace. But it looks like they're resetting the boss.
Because he's the only one who can battle rest, right?
Oh,
yeah.
Well, it is overnight, Nagura. You never know. So, Team 430 here taking advantage of this or just continuing to truck through the dungeon as they started their first transition phase. They will also, of course, have their battle res available in a moment, but hopefully they won't need to do it.
Yeah, we see Team 430. Now, on this boss, we want to watch out for Kiki's damage as he is the one with the buff. You can see it in the group frames on the top. It does stack up all the way to 9, and once it's on 9, you do get the full damage increase from it. It also reduces your max HP though, so you want to make sure that you don't get hit by any sort of ability because almost anything that you get hit by will just immediately one-shot you. So you want to watch out for that. One more thing that the Eastern region has to watch out for with these affixes is skittish, actually. Skittish, usually not a thing that people have to worry about because, you know, the rogues have tricks and the warriors do a lot of damage. But the warriors with necrotic, they have to watch out that they have to kite as well. And the healer generating so much aggro from the healing and the damage that they're doing that skittish actually can cause some problems for them.
Yeah, I mean, certainly, you're absolutely right. Skittish not usually a concern, and a lot of where that danger will come in is not even these denizens or the boss himself. It's actually going to be the eels, if they combine eels on top of the boss. That's where we saw some issue come in for random healer Gibbs yesterday. I'm not sure if they're going to do that on this side. I mean, they're only going to hit about 91% trash. I don't think they've pulled any of the eels, if I'm not mistaken, on the side of Team 430 yet, so they still have all 4 eel packs around the side of the room as Pixel has once again re-engaged Lord Stormsong, fully healthy, everybody alive, and they do have their battle res available this time. Should anyone except for the DK go down on their side, they will be able to battle res them if they want. 13 deaths here for Pixel right now versus Team 430's 8, and they're looking to pop their bloodlust right now and just get on this boss as quickly as possible. I don't think they're going to be able to one-phase it though.
So Kiki actually playing Guardian Affinity, which is very interesting because there's no way of them to do the cat weaving damage that we see from other healers come out on this boss, because if you don't run Feral Affinity, you don't actually have the abilities in cat form. You don't have Shroud, you don't have Rip, you don't have any of those abilities that are doing the most damage from the rest of druids on this boss. This is why you can also see Kiki maybe not doing as much damage as the other healers because he needs to be spamming that Brav and just applying Sunfire and Moonfire. This is a little bit safer, right, because you don't have to go in melee range, and therefore you have an easier time dodging the tentacles and the silence zone. But usually we do see healers just committing to that min-maxing and just committing to the Feral Affinity just to get the extra damage here.
The thing is also what's interesting about Kiki is he's not running the Ashara staff at all. He's running just a generic staff. I'm not sure what the reasoning behind that is. Fame going down on the side of Pixel because I believe they did have once again another mind control on one Zor. Fame had a brunt of the damage yet again. He goes down. Komi goes down. They do have their battle res available, but they got to do it quick before Lord Stormsong casts another Shadow Bolt as mid runs away with anti-magic shell. Here comes the Void Bolt. Fortunately, he had pre-popped anti-magic shell. I guess they're going to reset it here and not do the battle res, even though the boss was at 17%. So out they go. This time they would have the battle res available. DK is available, but they said, you know what, we'll reset the boss at 17%. And just not opt to finish it off. So yet another reset for them as Team 430 is most definitely going to get another transition, because by not transitioning it the first time and not dealing with the abominations, the little gooeys that come in on the side, each one of them gives 10 energy to the boss. There's 5 of them, so by the time they're finished with their transition, they wake up to a boss, or they come back to a boss that's already at 50 energy before the next transition.
Yeah, and they still have to deal with the 10% trash that they have left to reach the 100, so they need to do the eel pack still once they come out of the next intermission phase. If they want to play it completely safe, in theory they could finish off the boss first and then deal with the eels, but then the healer also loses the damage buff. Now he doesn't have Feral Affinity, so maybe he wouldn't even help that much anyway with the eel packs, because you don't have swipe available without Feral Affinity. So either way, maybe they just choose to play it safe here. Those eel packs, they are quite dangerous though because of the necrotic affix, just because not only do they apply necrotic, they also apply a shadow bleed effect that stacks and does do a lot of damage. damage, and it will apply to the closest target too. So once the tank starts kiting, it can apply to the melees around. Usually not a big deal for those kind of teams, but it can always cause some trouble.
Can always cause some. Actually, that's part of what we saw the healers go down to yesterday.
Yeah.
It's very easy to pull aggro on those eels, and as soon as you get one of that dot or damage over time application, that's over. Kiki finally topping the damage meters. There you go, that Guardian Affinity spamming that Soul Wrath as much as his little heart can take. 7% on the boss right now. They should be able to finish this off. They still have, as mentioned earlier, the quadruple eel packs along the outside. Pixel here, third time is the charm at Lord Stormsong, 67% right now on the boss, 16 deaths. I'm still not really sure why. Maybe Titles will talk about it later, but I'm still really not sure why they didn't just opt to use the battle res. I guess
the healer was mind controlled.
But I mean,
like forever. Like they didn't get him out of the mind bender.
Oh yeah, that'll do it.
Yeah, so Team 430 is pulling those eel packs now. Again, if they're watching the stream, they know they're really far ahead at this point, so they in theory could just pull one pack at a time, but it seems like they're pulling two together. You want to watch out a little bit with those eel packs because they tend to reset if you tank them on top of those ledges in weird spots. So you want to make sure you watch out a little bit for that. As Inspiration does have a lot of necrotic stacks, he just wants to kite at this point, does not want to get any more damage from those eels. And now you can see the shadow debuffs stacking on top of the melee. It's just because the tank is kiting, so it will apply to the closest target, as I mentioned earlier.
Yeah, so certainly pretty dangerous, but I mean, they've already dealt with the encounter, so any risk of the healer accidentally dying or anything like that is fine. They're taking it nice and slow right now. Virtually no chance of Pixel catching up at this point. I very much doubt Team 430 is going to wipe to some eels present at the end here. Here come the final two eel packs right now, and they will be able to clean this up and sweep the series to nothing. But speaking of cleanup, I mean, Nagura, this was not the kind of performance you want to see when you're starting to go up later against teams like even Black Mambo, which didn't have the best performance earlier, and let alone Buff Warrior and Nerf Rogue. But
Team 430, though, taking that series and, you know, preventing the Cinderella story for Team Pixel, which had a bit deeper of a run than we were really anticipating onto that one. It was good to start seeing how 430 was able to start pulling some things together on it, but Shrine could be a pretty unforgiving dungeon here, Titles.
I'll say it, bold stance. Resetting the second boss in Shrine of the Storm twice?
Not so great.
Not great, no. So 430 was actually having an okay run up until that point, but once they got to that where you end up resetting Brother Ironhole and Gale Caller Faye multiple times, you're in a really bad spot. They both ended up pulling the mini-boss into Accuseer, which is normally a very strong pull, and the reason for that being is that it's just you end up cleaving down and having very good efficiency on Windspeaker Heldus there with the mini boss into Accuseer. So that was a really good pull by 430. But like I said, them just having tank deaths and like DPS deaths and having to reset Brother Ironhole and Gale Caller Faye just put 430 at a really weird spot, causing them to have like a 35-minute Shrine of the Storm run. Just as like a point of reference, like a good Shrine of the Storm time is somewhere in the range of like 23 to 24 minutes. So the fact that they're somewhere in the range of like 11 minutes slower than some of our top contending team is very concerning for Team 430 moving through the rest of this tournament. However, Pixel was just slightly worse, so 430 does advance through the series because of it.
Yeah, it's always important to look at the vast differences. And a lot of times it's practice or execution. Also seeing some players who've been in the game for a long time and have so much experience with the dungeons themselves.
And I think it does come with practice, like you're saying, because the pulls that are required to be like a top contender require just like so much practice, and you have to have the ability to be able to do some of these shadow meld skips. 430, like the way that you know that they haven't practiced this dungeon a lot is you like look at how they're pathing through the dungeon, and they don't end up using shadow meld at all. They're running a rogue and then 4 night elves, and they only use shadow meld one time for one skip, and they even had a death on it. So it's very clear that if you're watching what's actually going on, that they haven't practiced the dungeon enough to be able to just like come through with some of these strategies. I wonder if they did have the time to be able to put into these dungeons, if that would change, though. It would be very interesting to see.
Yeah, we saw that previously on Freehold as well, so they'll really have to pull for that together as they go on throughout the bracket. So 430 moving on, Pixel getting eliminated. That will have our next matchup between One Last Chance and 430 to see who squares off against Black Mamba. So on this next matchup that we have right now, it's going to be starting up with the Mother Load, and we saw some very, very tumultuous pulls going on throughout that one. Nagura, Fortified Quaking quite dangerous.
Yeah, Metalloaf definitely, just in general, a very dangerous dungeon. Almost any sort of affix that somehow affects the trash will make it even more difficult, just because you have this very first area with the Peacekeepers, the Assassins, so many dangerous mobs that need to be handled really well, they need to be interrupted well. So we'll see how those teams do. We've seen some not so good dungeons yesterday, not a lot, but we'll see how it turns out for these two.
Well, she's so happy.
She loves seeing the wipes.
Oh, yeah.
Well, I mean, Tettles was mentioning before how 430 had a lot of struggles with Shadow Melts in particular. Motherlode is one of those dungeons that's ridiculously scripted as to, okay, when do you use your Shadow Melts, all right? You go through that 90, 100% of the trash, then you start going boss, 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 so you'll be able to have the Shadow Melts up just about every single time on that one, so... It's all kind of more scripted out for this team.
It'll be interesting to see, because One Last Chance, whenever they were playing 430 yesterday, they were pulling very aggressively, and if they were able to convert some of their aggressiveness into like cleaner pulls, then they would have actually won that series. And I think that they probably should have won that series, all things considered, because they actually won one of their matches off of like even having like major mistakes. 430 just ends up pulling so slow. So it's going to be a pretty tight match between 430 and One Last Chance, I think, moving forward.
Interesting. Who do you think is going to be taking it, Salute?
I mean, I would assume that One Last Chance looked back on their play yesterday and fixed it up. I don't think you even need to have a stellar top MDI quality run to beat 430 if 430 is just moving at 430 pace, even if they don't have many scripts. 430 is just very slow and steady, wins the race kind of team. So if OLC just kind of cleans up a lot of what they had, a lot of the issues yesterday, which is hard to do in Motherlode, but then I think they'll take it, and I don't think it'll be as close as Tettles is saying. But if they play like they did yesterday, then yeah, we'll have another, very kind of sluggish 3-game series kind of thing going on.